The sharp sound of the slap rang out across the diner. The waitress stumbled back. Coffee splashed onto the floor tiles. Nobody budged. In the far corner booth sat a Navy SEAL with his highly trained canine partner resting quietly at his feet. The man didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't even shift in his seat. The local deputy, wearing the badge, had grown comfortable with how quiet this town stayed around him. He was used to people avoiding eye contact, used to the way fear made them smaller. The badge had convinced him no one would ever push back. He was wrong. That sense of untouchable power ran straight into a former Navy SEAL who knew exactly the right moment to act. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell us what part of the world you're watching from. If this story hits home, consider hitting subscribe. Late fall in western Colorado didn't come with pretty colors or cozy vibes. It showed up cold and serious, creeping into your jacket seams, turning every breath into visible steam the second it left your lungs. A thin, weak sun stayed hidden behind flat clouds. The highway rolled through low hills lined with dark pine trees and scattered patches of dirty-looking early snow. The little town was easy to drive right past without noticing. One straight main street, a handful of tired-looking shops, and a roadside diner parked where the pavement turned to gravel. Inside, the place felt warm only because the old heater was working overtime. Folks kept their voices low. They'd learned that getting loud could bring trouble. Ryan Caldwell pulled into the lot in an older pickup. Gravel crunched under the tires. He sat for a second with both hands on the wheel, eyes scanning the windows, the door, and the sheriff's cruiser parked a bit too boldly beside the building. He was 34, tall, lean, and strong in a quiet way that didn't show until he moved. Sandy blonde hair cut short and military neat. No trendy style, just practical. A trimmed beard framed his jaw, and a faint pale scar traced along one side like an old reminder. Hazel eyes stayed calm and watchful, the kind that notice details most people miss. He wore a plain navy working uniform, A02 green blouse and matching trousers, Velcro patches blank, no name tape, no rank, no unit markings. Tan combat boots carried road dust. He looked like someone who had left his old life quickly and hadn't tried to replace it yet. At his side walked a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois, compact, muscular, fawn coat with a dark overlay across the back and face. The dog's amber eyes looked almost black when he focused. Broad chest, powerful legs, every movement controlled and efficient. He wore only a simple leather collar that night, no flashy harness yet. Like Ryan, the dog kept a low profile. The Malinois stayed close, matching Ryan's stride, head level, ears tuned to everything. This wasn't a family pet tagging along. This was a working teammate who treated silence like part of the job. They stepped inside. The bell above the door gave a weak, half-hearted jingle. Warm air hit first, then the familiar smells, burnt coffee, old fryer grease, something sweet that had been sitting too long. Low voices murmured from people trying to keep their lives small and safe. The diner had narrow aisles, cracked red vinyl booths, worn linoleum, and a long counter that looked exhausted from years of wiping. Near the window sat 4 Latino men in their late 20s to early 40s, construction or ranch hands, faces lined from sun and hard work, heavy jackets, rough hands. They spoke quietly in Spanish, not because they were hiding, but because they knew drawing attention here could turn bad fast. One older man with gray-streaked stubble kept glancing at the door. Another younger one had bruised knuckles and sat very still. Behind the counter moved Sarah Whitaker, early 30s, tall, slim, auburn hair and a loose bun that never stayed tidy. Freckles across her nose, green eyes that could be warm but usually stayed guarded. She was polite to everyone because politeness had become her shield. She smiled when she didn't mean it, said sorry even when it wasn't her fault, kept her shoulders slightly rounded like she was used to taking up less space. An old marriage that ended badly and a custody battle had taught her how fast a woman's word could be ignored in a place like this. So she worked hard, kept quiet, and tried not to catch the eye of men who carried badges and bad tempers. Ryan picked the corner booth with his back to the wall, old habit. The Malinois slid under the table, lay flat, chin on paws, almost invisible. When Sarah came over, Ryan ordered the cheapest breakfast plate in a calm, polite voice. No extra chatter. He ate slowly, cutting everything neatly. Halfway through, he lowered a piece to the dog, who took it without noise, tail giving the tiniest wag, chewing carefully. Then the door opened again. The bell sounded sharper this time. The low talking faded like someone turned down the volume. Wayne Carver walked in. Late 40s, tall, heavy in the chest and gut, deputy uniform worn like it gave him ownership of the room. Ruddy cheeks, swollen nose, small, restless eyes, thinning, dark hair slicked back with too much gel, short, patchy beard, permanent frown lines around the mouth. His hand rested near his holster, not out of worry, but because he liked reminding everyone what the gun and badge allowed. He didn't say hello to anyone. He just looked around like people were objects that should stay quiet and do what he wanted. A few locals froze. The 4 workers dropped their eyes to their coffee. Sarah's fingers tightened on the coffee pot for a second, then relaxed because she knew showing fear made things worse. Carver sat at the counter, ordered loudly without a please, then barked a short laugh at something only he found funny. The laugh landed hard, like a warning. Sarah moved fast and careful, set his mug down gently. Everything might have stayed normal, ugly but familiar, until her elbow bumped the pot. A splash of coffee hit the counter and a few drops landed on his sleeve. The slap cracked through the room like a breaking branch. Sarah's head jerked sideways, she stumbled. Her bun came loose, strands falling across her face. A red mark spread fast across her cheek. She didn't cry out, she didn't touch her face. Her hand lifted halfway, then stopped, like she was afraid making it real would make it permanent. Carver stood over her, breathing hard, smelling of liquor and anger, eyes gleaming because people were watching and no one was stopping him. "Watch yourself," he said loud enough for the whole room. "You people get careless when you think no one's looking." The words "you people" floated there, vague and ugly, hitting everyone it could hit. Sarah, the workers, anyone he felt like shrinking. No one spoke. The cook stayed in the back. One local stared at his plate like it held the answer to staying alive. One of the workers clenched his jaw so tight the muscle jumped, but he kept both hands on his mug. He knew how quick a town could turn on someone who had no papers, no backup. Sarah swallowed, straightened slowly, and whispered, "Sorry," a word that didn't belong to her, but one she'd learned sometimes bought a few more minutes of safety. Ryan watched the whole thing and didn't move. He didn't stand, he didn't speak. His body stayed relaxed, hands calm, eyes locked on Carver, not angry, not scared, just steady. Under the table, the Malinois went rigid, muscles tight under his coat, amber eyes fixed on Carver's boots, a low rumble starting deep in his chest. Ryan's boot pressed gently against the dog's shoulder, one small, private signal. The Malinois stayed down, body still quivering with control because he waited for the command. Ryan's silence wasn't weakness, it was choice. Wayne Carver didn't understand choice. In his world, loud people won and quiet people folded. Carver turned, looking for anyone who dared to meet his eyes. His gaze landed on Ryan, the blank uniform patches, the calm face, the hidden gog, the lack of fear. To Carver, that stillness looked like an easy target. He smirked, the smile of a man who'd just picked his next demonstration. The diner didn't snap back to normal after that first slap. It just learned to hold its breath longer. You could hear the heater clicking, a spoon tapping a cup, a chair leg scraping the floor, but real talking stayed dead. People shifted in their seats like animals waiting out a storm. Sarah stood behind the counter again, hands folded over her apron, shoulders set in that practiced way she'd developed over years, straight enough to look okay, rounded enough to seem harmless. She was raising a young man alone, a boy who slept late because she worked nights, a boy who'd already learned to ask questions carefully and not count on promises. That weight showed in how she moved. She wiped the counter in slow circles, eyes down, not giving up, just thinking ahead. She tried reporting Carver once before, years ago, after he'd cornered her in the back hall one night. The report vanished like it never existed, and she learned that paperwork didn't mean protection when the wrong person held the file. Ryan kept eating, slow and steady, like the tension in the room wasn't worth rushing for. The Malinois stayed flat under the table, eyes sharp, body coiled but perfectly still. The short coat caught the dim light in soft gold and shadow. His steady breathing was the only calm thing in the place for anyone paying attention. Hank Grayson, the owner, stood behind the register pretending to sort bills he already knew by heart. Early 60s, thick shoulders from years in the coal mines, thin gray hair, a cough that never left him. He opened the diner when the mine shut down because he needed something that wouldn't walk away from him. He knew exactly how many times Carver came in, ate for free, and how the cameras happened to stop working afterwards. Hank had quietly made backup copies of those recordings, not because he was brave, but because he refused to let the town wipe its own memory clean. At the far end of the counter sat Jake Merrill, the young deputy. 23, uniform still crisp, boots polished like they mattered more than anything else. He sat stiff, hands flat on his thighs, like he was afraid they'd do something on their own. He'd grown up a couple counties away, raised by a mechanic dad who believed authority came from doing things right, not from scaring people. Watching Carver had already cracked that belief. Seeing the slap had broken something inside him. He knew it was wrong. He knew it should be reported. He also knew reporting it the normal way would loop right back to the man who ran everything. Jake glanced at Ryan, then at Sarah, then looked down fast, jaw locked, because bravery without a real plan just got more people hurt. Ryan finished his food, slid the chair back quietly, and walked to the counter. He laid cash down exactly, his meal plus extra. "This covers mine," he said in a low, even voice, "and whatever got missed earlier." Hank looked up surprised. His fingers shook a little as he took the money, not from the amount, but from what the simple act meant. Someone had noticed the unpaid tab without turning it into a scene. Sarah saw it too, and something small and dangerous flickered behind her eyes. Hope. She pushed it down fast, because hope usually got punished here. Ryan reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded scrap of paper, and slipped it under the edge of his empty plate. Just a phone number, written in neat block letters. No name, no explanation. He didn't look at Sarah when he did it. He knew meeting eyes could feel like pressure she didn't need. He headed for the door. The Malinois rose smooth and silent, falling in at his heel. That's when Carver moved. He stepped into the doorway, boots planted wide, body angled to block the way without making it obvious. One hand rested on his holster, thumb brushing the leather like a habit. The whole room seemed to shrink. "Leaving so soon?" Carver said, voice lazy and loud. His eyes flicked to the dog, then back to Ryan's face. The Malinois stopped when Ryan stopped, muscles tight, gaze locked on Carver's belt line, reading every shift of weight. "Yes," Ryan answered. One word. Polite. Final. Carver stepped closer, crowding him. "Funny, you don't look like the usual drifters passing through." Ryan didn't bite. Silence was better than feeding the trap. Carver's eyes dropped to the dog. "That your animal?" "Yes." For a second, the room held dead quiet. Everyone calculating costs. "I don't like surprises," Carver said, voice dropping lower, "and I don't like strangers thinking they can tell people how to handle their business." His glance slid toward the counter, making sure everyone knew who he meant. Ryan met his eyes, calm as ever. "I'm leaving." The words didn't argue, they didn't back down, they just refused to bend, and that landed harder than yelling ever could. Carver's jaw clenched, his hand tightened on the holster. Something in the air shifted, not to violence yet, but to the point where it felt like it had to go one way or the other. Then Carver swung. Open hand, full force. The slap cracked loud across Ryan's face. Ryan rocked half a step, head turned with the hit, blood taste in his mouth. But he didn't swing back. He didn't raise his arms. Training told him the second after the hit was where mistakes happened. Under the table, the Malinois exploded up, growl ripping out, body lunging forward, every muscle screaming to protect his handler. Ryan's voice cut through sharp and low. One firm command. The dog froze mid-stride, legs trembling, ears pinned, eyes burning on Carver, but he lowered himself back down. Obedience won over instinct because trust ran that deep. The room reacted in small ways. Chairs scraped, breath caught. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Hank's chest squeezed tight. Jake felt sick because this wasn't gray anymore. This was a crime in front of everyone. Carver grinned, ugly and short. He raised his hand again, ready to hit a man who wouldn't beg. Ryan shifted, just enough. The second swing missed clean. Carver's momentum carried him forward. His boot snagged a chair leg. He crashed down hard, tables tipping, plates smashing, coffee spilling everywhere. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Broken dishes rang in the air. Carver shoved himself up, face dark red, pride gone sour. His hand flew to his gun. The holster clicked open. "On the ground!" he yelled, voice cracking. "You're resisting!" Ryan didn't argue. He lowered himself slowly to the floor, stomach down, hands behind his back. Controlled, clear, no fight. "Stay," he said softly, to the dog. The Malinois lowered again, rigid, eyes never leaving Carver. Carver knelt hard, knee in Ryan's back, cuffs snapping tight, too tight. Each click sounded like a statement. Sarah flinched. Tears came anyway. She knew how the story would get rewritten unless something broke the pattern. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Another deputy, older, heavier, tired-looking, stepped up, grabbed the dog's collar, tied him to a metal post outside with rope. The deputy didn't meet the dog's eyes. His hands moved quick but careful, almost sorry. Ryan was hauled up and pushed toward the cruiser. Door slammed, engine started, taillights disappeared down the empty road. The diner stayed silent, heavy, crushed. Sarah dropped onto a stool. Hank bent to pick up broken pieces, hands shaking. Jake stepped outside into the snow, watching the lights fade, knowing this moment would decide who he became. The town didn't explode. It soaked in the hit the way small towns do, quiet, deep, letting it settle into walls and glances. In the windless holding cell, fluorescent buzzed overhead. Ryan sat straight on the bench, breathing even, wrists red from cuffs. 48 hours could feel endless or short. He treated them the same, one breath at a time, mind on facts, not replays. Jake didn't sleep. He sat on his bed in uniform till dawn, then went back to the station early. He moved quiet through empty halls, sat at the security desk, hands unsteady. He knew which cameras usually failed. This time, the files were still there. He copied everything, dates, times, onto a small drive he'd brought from home. Logged out, wiped his tracks as best he could, sat a minute longer. Decision made. Across town, Hank opened the diner before light, cleaned alone. Sarah arrived while it was still dark, cheek bruised, hair pulled tight. Hank locked the door, led her to the back office, opened a scratched metal cabinet. Envelopes, drives, each labeled with dates. "I kept copies," he said plain. "Every time he made me delete, I saved one." Sarah stared, touched one envelope, nodded. Fear turning into something harder. Outside, the Malinois stood chained to the post near the station. No pacing, no whining, just watching. Tall, alert, dignified. A woman named Maggie Ellison, late 40s, school secretary, gray in her dark hair, upright carriage, paused across the street. "Good boy," she said softly. Didn't reach, moved on, frowning. That frown would turn into conversations later. After 2 nights, Carver opened the cell. "You're free to go. No charges." Voice flat. Then quieter. "I suggest you leave town today." Ryan stood, walked out. Cold air felt clean. He knelt by the dog, hand in thick fur. "Easy. I'm here." The Malinois leaned in. Tension eased, but didn't vanish. Ryan didn't go back to the diner. He went to his truck, made calls from a payphone, short, precise. Military liaison he trusted. Federal inspector recommended quietly. Facts only, no drama. He drove back to the station lot, unhooked the chain, loaded the dog. Carver watched from across the pavement, said nothing. Watching was all he could do now. The town started feeling it. Maggie talked in the grocery aisle. Sarah and Hank sorted evidence. Jake locked the drive in his locker. Ryan stopped at the edge of town, hand on the wheel, Malinois upright beside him. He didn't look back. The truth was moving now, didn't need him to push it. Snow started falling, steady, soft, decided. A black federal sedan rolled in later.
Karen Voss, early 50s, tall, square-shouldered, dark coat, hair in a tight knot, stepped out. No rush, no show. She knew where she was going. Inside the station, Carver tried laughing it off, then arguing, then yelling, then quiet when cuffs clicked and pattern of abuse was said plain. He looked smaller. No allies stepped up. Jake stood in the back, spoke when asked, voice steady, described what he saw, what he saved. He didn't become a hero, he just became himself. Sarah sat in a side room, listened to an advocate explain protections and steps, signed papers without shaking. Bruise fading, but memory sharp. Proof now. The diner opened that afternoon. Same bell, same coffee smell, but people talked softer, not scared, just aware. Stood taller somehow. Hank worked the counter lighter. Maggie came in, ordered tea, nodded to Sarah, watched the snowfall. Quiet comfort in knowing change could happen without a fight. Evening came. Ryan parked across the street, engine running, snow on the hood. Malinois in tactical harness now, black, snug, professional. Ryan stepped out, stood in the cold, looked at the diner. Sarah appeared in the doorway, apron on, hand to her chest. Small nod. Ryan nodded back. No smile, no words, just enough. He climbed in. Malinois shifted to make room. Engine rumbled. Truck pulled away slow into thickening snow. He didn't look back. The job had never been to stay. It was to stand long enough for others to stand too. We wait for big, dramatic rescues sometimes. Thunder, lightning, obvious signs. But often the real work happens quieter. Through patience, through restraint, through truth that won't go away. Ryan didn't win by being louder or meaner. He won by staying
calm when fear said run, by choosing control when anger would have been simpler, by trusting the right thing would matter even without applause. We all face moments like that, times when speaking feels dangerous, staying calm feels weak, walking away looks easier. But truth sets people free. Not fast, not painless, but sure. God doesn't always fix things with fireworks. Sometimes he puts regular people in regular places and asks them to choose courage without seeing the end. If this story moved you, let it remind you, quiet integrity still counts. Goodness doesn't need approval to exist. Small, unseen choices can change broken places. Share it if you think someone feeling powerless needs to see it. Drop a comment so others know they're not alone. Subscribe if you want more stories about real courage and real hope. And if you believe God still moves through patience, restraint, and faith, even in the silent fights, leave an amen below. May God bless you, keep you, and walk close through every quiet battle you face.